Here is an example of a quadratic equation which we could not solve by factoring, but we can solve by completing the square. So let's start by subtracting 8 from both sides. So x squared minus 4x equals negative 8. Now we're going to take half the coefficient on the x term and square it. So half of 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. We're going to add 4 to both sides. So x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals negative 8 plus 4. Now we have forced the left side of this equation to be factorable, and it factors as x minus 2 squared. And on the right we have negative 8 plus 4, or negative 4. So that tells us, using the square root property, that x minus 2 is equal to the square root of negative 4, or x minus 2 is equal to negative square root of negative 4. And recall, the square root of negative 4 could be written as the square root of 4 times the square root of negative 1. Well, the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of negative 1 is I. So we really have x minus 2 equals 2i, or x minus 2 equals negative 2i. And adding 2 to both sides gives us x equals 2 plus 2i, or x equals 2 minus 2i. Again, remember to write your complex numbers in the form seen here, where it's the real part followed by the imaginary part. In the slightly more complicated case where our lead coefficient, that is the coefficient on the x squared term, is not equal to 1, one way to do this is by dividing the entire equation by that coefficient that's in front of the x squared. So in this case we'll divide the entire equation by 8. This will give us x squared minus 1/2 x plus 1/8 equals 0. And then we subtract 1/8 from both sides, so x squared minus 1/2 x equals negative 1/8. Now we take half the coefficient on the x term and square it. So half of 1/2 is a fourth, and 1/4 squared is 1/16. So add 1/16 to both sides. So x squared minus 1/2 x plus 1/16 equals negative 1/8 plus 1/16. Now the left side, because we've been using completing the square, this factors as x minus 1/4 squared. And on the right we get negative 1/8 plus 1/16. Well, negative 1/8, if we multiply the top and bottom of that fraction by 2, becomes negative 2/16. So negative 2/16 plus 1/16 would be negative 1/16. So when we apply the square root property, we're going to want to know what the square root of negative 1/16 is. So notice that if we look at the square root of negative 1/16, this is equal to the square root of 1/16 times the square root of negative 1. Well, the square root of 1/16 is the number that we multiply by itself to get 1/16. Well, that would be 1/4. So 1/4, and the square root of negative 1 is I, so we get 1/4 I. So that means that x minus 1/4 is equal to 1/4 I, that is the square root of negative 1/16, or x minus 1/4 is equal to negative 1/4 I. So adding 1/4 to the first equation gives us x equals 1/4 plus 1/4 I. And adding 1/4 to the second equation gives us x equals 1/4 minus 1/4 I.